everybody, welcome to Sprueverse, my scale model universe, and people of Earth, welcome to the final installment of Build the MK3 Dalek from Doctor Who and the Daleks, starring Peter Cushing, 1966. And I'm going straight into PhilCam because here it is in its sconce. And all of its glory, I should say, on its little pedestal here. I built a little diorama to put around it. And what I did was I copied a wall from the actual film. I thought, let's be canon, except I've got to admit, this wall sconce is actually a block landing light for the Build the X-Wing from D'Agostini. It came in what they called the premium package. I thought it was not, I don't know what it was. Anyway, it went in the junk box, and here we are. It's ended up as a wall sconce, and it's looking pretty good. I think it works pretty good. The other thing is, unfortunately, I lost my light in my iris, my light iris here. I don't know what happened. I'll check it out. Something went amiss, but the gun is lit, which I suppose blasted steam or smoke in the film. Obviously, later in the television series, they went to a more dynamic effect. The headlights are on and nobody is home, but it does look like a lot of fun. So I'm really happy with it. And I think that ultimately this it's not a complicated build. And I would say you could definitely do this, give it a try. Now, there are several versions of this. One of the other versions is a television version, and that is available as well from the old Comet. You can find it on eBay, and I think that ultimately what you really have is a group of people who have obviously hung on to these models. And so there you go. I'm going to put my lights on here just to get a little more illumination on it, and leave it in front of me for the Q&A session, which really this is sort of about. It turned out to be kind of popular, and I appreciate everybody. And if you're just sort of strolling through and you've seen me and we're talking about Doctor Who today, please like and subscribe, because I will do a few more of these things down the road. I have a Davros coming from the Savron. I'll have to double check that. I'm probably screwing up the name of this kit. But anyway, it doesn't look awesome, but we'll clean it up and see if we can put it together. It'd be fun to put a Davros together and maybe do one last chat later in the year. But anyway, a lot of the questions that I've had obviously have surrounded the production and the cast and how you pick the cast, but a lot of questions were about the Tardis itself, that incredible police box. And once again, for those of you who may or may not have tuned in to the last couple of episodes, the 3-foot miniature that was used in the main title, I Still Possess. Here's a picture of it. And so it was quite a detailed box. Now, a lot of people want to know all kinds of things about it. The plans for that police box were given to me by Tony Woodward, who was once head of enterprises over in the UK. These were actual plans for building a Tom Baker version of the box. And so what you see is a slight variation of a box that it was actually built for Tom Baker. And the main title sequence where Sylvester McCoy pops out of it as it materializes in what is supposed to be San Francisco is that box. And we obviously did a miniature version of it, the 3-foot model, as I said. That police box is obviously incredibly iconic, and over the years has gone through quite a few changes, not only on the outside but on the inside. And one of the most important parts of the lore of Doctor Who is understanding the physics, the dynamics, and the rules, some of the rules. And of course, the Tardis, which all of you know, but for some of you who don't, I apologize, stands for time and relative dimensions in space, Tardis. And so what the Tardis was the Doctor's time machine. And for those of you who also don't know, and forgive me, because I know there's a lot of you who are going to roll your eyes right now, but for those of you who don't know, the TARDIS materializes in London, and it takes the form of anything it wants to take the form of, so that it can essentially blend in with its surroundings. That's one of the unique features of the Time Lord's machine. Well, in the original sort of folklore of it all, the Doctor lands, it materializes as a police box, and then the cloaking device breaks. And so it never gets fixed. And so from then on, the Doctor is flying around in a time machine that looks like a blue police box. And that is sort of a little bit of the background of how we got there. But the inside of it is the most fascinating part. And for me, I went back to the Doctor Who years starring Tom Baker when, if you recall, there were a couple of episodes in which he wanders around many of the different halls, and then at one time ends up obviously in what was called the old TARDIS console room, which I thought was really interesting. And then there were a bunch of other corridors, but we never saw too much. I think a cloakroom maybe, or something to that nature, but mostly they were just sort of corridors. But it was the original TARDIS control room that gave me the inspiration to think about this in a different way. And that was that perhaps if we took on a more sort of steampunk Victorian feel, perhaps it wouldn't date itself. It would always feel like it was from a different time and a different place, but it would never have knobs and buttons and anything that perhaps could be identified with a particular place. So we decided to go with a sort of steampunked Victorian kind of feel, and then sort of take it from there. And I worked very closely, obviously, with Richard Houdolan, who was my production designer, and he took to the actual mythology like a fish to water. He was awesome to work with, and I had a lot of fun playing with him. He was a very great collaborator, and I will always appreciate how hard Richard worked to give me what I wanted, and to try and create an interior for this TARDIS that it deserved to be. This sort of epic landscape with all these different rooms. Obviously, we built the room that housed the Eye of Harmony, and there were 4 pillars, one of which could be removed, and it was a key, and it ended up being a big part of a fight sequence inside at the sort of end of the movie. And one of the other questions I always got was, well, what happened to that TARDIS, that police box, and what happened to some of those props? Well, sadly, the box itself, I believe, was junked. Now, it may be secreted away in someone's collection in Toronto. I don't think it ever left Toronto, so if it does still exist, it's there. Now, the pillar for the Eye of Harmony came to me, but sadly it was stolen in what was a storage locker break-in many years ago. So I lost a lot of those things. However, I did have a few odds and ends. I had some roundels, and I had, there was a doctor's bag, if you recall, that had all these tools in it. And what I did with those is I auctioned them off for charity at a big Doctor Who convention in Chicago. So I don't know whose possession they are in now and what happened to them. Sadly, a lot of these things end up getting broken up or copied or duplicated, and they end up in in people's hands, and they're not really the actual props. But that's just part of the reality of filmmaking. Sadly, when you don't go on to series, when it ends up just being like we were, a television movie, then things are not kept. They're shut down and they're trashed, and that's just the nature of filmmaking. But to carry on talking about the TARDIS, one of the things that I really wanted was a living space. If you think about it, this is where the Doctor lives. Now, obviously, other than the years that the John Pertwee years in which he was sort of stuck on Earth, and that was a great conceit, obviously, so that they could save money. But other than that, I thought to myself, well, the Doctor, this is his home. He rarely goes back to Gallifrey, but he. It's not like in Star Trek where the Enterprise goes home and everybody gets shore leave somewhere. The Doctor lives in the TARDIS, so I thought give him a living space. And so you saw a little bit of that with Sylvester McCoy having tea at the top of the film. And I always enjoyed that experience and watching that. And of course the control area, which had its own sort of area. And if you look really closely at some of the shots of the opening TARDIS scene with Sylvester McCoy, you'll see some things that I put in the set that are markers or icons from previous seasons. For instance, there's a flute there which belonged to Patrick Troughton in the Troughton years. And but let me clarify that. It wasn't the actual flute. It is a flute. But he played a flute, and so we had that there. And different little touches to remind us that there were regenerations. Now, of course, no one will really pick that stuff up unless you freeze a frame, but it's all there, including his 900-year diary, which I believe also appeared in the Troughton years. So anyway, that's a few fun things about what the TARDIS meant to me and why I went to such lengths to give it that great interior. One of the other big things that I wanted to talk about was why I decided to do some of the things that I did that I thought were interesting to grow the character, but they were also to help me with my what I called cultural bridge, and to ground him for an American audience. So we obviously went with a few things like he had his first kiss, the Doctor. But why can't the Doctor be a romantic? Every regeneration of the Doctor gives you a slightly different Doctor. I mean, obviously, we just had a female play the Doctor. So in that case, you can see the rationale for the different emotional contexts that get picked up from character to character. And there's a lot of purists out there who go, that's just wrong. And I accept the fact that perhaps it went a little too far for some of the purists. And to those people, I apologize. But for me, I thought it was a fun way for us to expand on the folklore. The other thing that did not get into this script, that was in a previous script written by John Leakley, and that was the original script that we were working on when it was attached to Amblin, and it was going to be a Spielberg production. And in that script, in that story, the Doctor is half human. I'm going to wait for people's heads to explode. Here they go, I can hear them. But he was half human. And in the pilot episode, the Doctor has to find his father because he has to unlock some mysteries and some secrets from the past that have to do with his present. And so there were a lot of brilliant scenes that never got told. Obviously, in the opening of that film, we find the Doctor in these catacombs, in these incredible caves, and we'd found this incredible location in Moab, Utah, where we were going to use it, and it was going to be what we discover at the top of the film is essentially a cocoon that is holding all of these Daleks. And here's a picture from the previous. If you didn't see it, this was the Dalek. And imagine them all in these cocoons, in these webs, in this massive cage. And he realizes that they are ready for an invasion of Earth. And that's how the film starts. And it had a lot more time travel in it and a lot more of a period feel to it. So that was that. In the 96 film, obviously, we went to a completely different, but in some ways very familiar story, because it's very hard to find a way to do something that is supposed to be a movie, but it's also a pilot, but that has a beginning and a middle and an end in case you don't get picked up and you need something that's going to be satisfying. So we went with this sort of convention of, this sort of end of time, end of world convention. And I have to tell you, looking back on it, I probably would not have gone down that road. I probably would have, had I have had a little more time and a lot more of a collaboration from the entire sort of group of companies that were with me, I wouldn't have chosen the Master. I would have done a Dalek story, and it would have had a lot more of a sort of War of the Worlds kind of feel to it. But, there you go. We didn't get a chance to do that, and that's okay. I have no regrets. I'm very proud of this film, and I think it stands up. There are a few things that obviously date it, but for the most part, I think we put a lot of passion and a lot of energy into it. And interestingly enough, I think it was in 2012, 2013, there was a 50th anniversary special that I came across that BFI did, British Film Institute. I didn't ever know about it, nor was I ever invited to it, but Paul was, and so he talked quite fondly of me in that, and tried to sort of explain some things. So it was fun to see that, and it was fun to know that the 96 movie and the Eighth Doctor have become a part of what is the overall history and folklore that is Doctor Who, and that's a great legacy that I'm very, very proud of. So that's it for this episode. Thanks for hanging in there. I know that we're a little off topic in terms of building models here, but we're going to get right back into it with a couple of things. I'm going to be building a U-boat from Das Werks coming up. I'm really excited about diving into that. And we're going to be finishing up the EVA pod from 2001: A Space Odyssey. And I'm also going to be putting out a video about bases called Base Camp, because I'm not great at bases, and that's one of the things I'm going to use this year to improve on, is how you display your models, but also taking into consideration that a lot of people who build models don't have a lot of shelf space. So not every model can have a massive diorama, but in the scale that I like to build in, a lot of these things don't get dioramas, and some do. And I thought this was one of those times where I thought it would be fun to put our MK3 Dalek in a diorama. So there you go. Thanks for being with us for this episode. Thank you for being a subscriber. Please like and subscribe if you've just arrived and you're not sure what's going on. You can follow me on Instagram at Spruverse. You can also check out my website, which is spruverse.com. And I also have a couple of links there to some of the greatest channels that I in my YouTube account, I should say, on my channel. There's 2 or 3 very special channels that mean a lot to me as we grow up. So there you go. Check me out, and we'll see you next time. Be safe, be well, build something, guys, and we'll see you next time. Take care, everybody.